brief delay due to lightning and hard rain. But it was Chattanooga Central defeating Walker Valley by a score of 40-28 in the first game. That took 3.5 hours. Then finally at around 10 o'clock, the second game between Baylor and Notre Dame got underway. A lot of turnovers took care of the Notre Dame offense, and the runners-up in Division II Class AA from last season ended up losing to Baylor 35-14 at Finley Stadium. Other scores from other kickoff classic games include Calhoun defeating Ridgeland 45-21, Meigs County over Sweetwater 47-7. Later tonight, Keon Rose and Nick LaFew will be bringing you the Soddy Daisy Red Bank game from Red Bank High School with airtime of Countdown to Kickoff at 7 p.m. Sam Jordan, News Talk 92.7 Action Sports now.
Nuga Radio.
Are you brain dead? Still voting for pathetic liberals? Take 3 hours of Sean Hannity from 3 to 6.
Nuga Radio.
Then call us in the morning between 9 and 11.
92.7
Nuga Radio.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's a rainy day here in the city of Chattanooga, but if you woke up this morning, guess what? You're doing all right. Somebody didn't wake up this morning, so be grateful. Oh, man. Y'all know what it is. It's Marie Mont Show, taking it from the streets to City Hall to the mayor's office. Can't leave out the police department. From the Valley Low to the mountaintop, giving you guys a bird's eye view to what's going on here in the city of Chattanooga. Good morning, good people. To all those who are listening, 92.7 FM. As always, the call-in number is always the same, 800-8949, 800-8949 if you want to call in and chop it up. I'm also streaming live on Facebook and YouTube as well. And if you can't call in, never be afraid to drop a comment. So Friday, I hereby deem all Fridays, hence now and forever, that I am on the radio. Know Your Rights Fridays. And we're going to start getting into it, folks, because I believe that a lot of us haven't gone over the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, probably since we were in middle school or high school. And when we start looking at how we deal, especially in the inner city, we have to admit that the inner city is over-policed. You will not find a police presence anywhere like you will find it in the inner city. But police culture is the same everywhere. Now, let me say that again. The police presence is going to be bolstered up in the inner city because that's often where minorities are. But police culture is the same no matter where you are. Okay? If we have not understood, we have Constance Giles, who called police for help out in Walker County, and she ended up being arrested. How do you call the police for assistance and you end up being the one arrested? You're calling them for help. And she's fighting that even this morning. And then we have the young lady who was shot through her windshield in Soddy Daisy not too long ago by police officers from fleeing. So 800-8949 if you want to call and talk to me. But today and henceforth now forever, Friday is Know Your Rights Friday, because I believe when we deal with, when we get pulled over or when we interact with police, a lot of us have either, if it's not a personal experience, we know of people in our family, people in our church, people in our neighborhood who have been harassed or have had a situation where they have been bothered by police. Let's be real. Let's be honest. A lot of us know at least somebody. If we have not encountered that ourselves, we know somebody. And the last thing you want to do is argue with a police officer. It doesn't work out in your favor. Let me say that, folks. Arguing with the police officer never works out in your favor. They got the guns, the billy clubs, the mace, the handcuffs. And at the end of the day, if they don't choose to hit that body cam as they're supposed to do when they get out of the car, if they don't hit that body cam and there's no physical footage or you're not recording when you have an interaction with them, it's your word against theirs. But I believe what will throw them off, will make our interactions here in the inner city as people of color, as minorities, as even poor people, what will make them just be flipped on side of their head is understanding our rights. And how do I believe that that's true? The more I talk about rights, the more it pisses certain people off. Because they don't want you to know your rights. They want you to have emotional responses so you can end up saying something that will incriminate yourself or doing something that can be perceived as aggression. But when you use that beautiful brain that God gave you and you fight back with your rights, your understanding of law, knowing your rights, verbalizing those rights, and understanding what to do in those situations is really the danger, but the saving grace for you. Now, we're talking about today, knowing your rights, the Miranda Warning, Fifth Amendment. I'm even gonna dabble into due process. What does that mean? We're gonna get into some meanings, understandings, because I want you, and let me rephrase, because sometimes I say things and I think about it later and say, I need to start rephrasing and helping the listener reframe how they think about things. I'm not here to empower you. You already got the power. Let me say that again. I'm not here to empower you. You already have the power. It's just some things you may not know, or some things you may not have heard in a long time since you've gotten out of school that you need a refresher on. And so let's get into it. Know Your Rights Fridays, hence now and forever, Miranda Warning. So we're going to start with the landmark case in 1966. It was Ernesto Miranda versus the state of Arizona. It was a landmark case where he was accused of raping and kidnapping and murdering a young lady. And him being an immigrant, he was taken into custody and was not Mirandized. Now, when we think of Miranda, it ties directly into the Fifth Amendment. And we'll get into that in just a second. But Miranda Warning is something that you should, according to the Chattanooga Police Department's handbook, your Miranda Warning should happen the moment that they interact with you and they decide if they're going to ask you questions as far as leading to an arrest. So they should tell you beyond, right? If they stop you, we covered this before a couple of weeks ago at the first Know Your Rights. If you're being stopped, you have the right to ask why you're being stopped. You don't have to show your license. Now you can, or your ID. You have a right to ask why you're being stopped. Are you being detained? Have you been? Are you committing a crime? If the answer to these questions is yes, what are the charges brought against you? And are you under arrest? All right, we covered that a couple of weeks ago. So we're picking up with the Miranda, which should be an explanation that if you are now being brought under arrest, what are your rights? And number one of the Miranda Warning is you have a right to remain silent. Now, I talked about this the first time because a lot of us don't understand. We feel the need, and I understand why. A lot of times when we interact with police, we are frustrated, right? Y'all know I'm telling the truth. We're frustrated. We're irritated. The city of Chattanooga and David Toulis are going through it. As far as him giving the notice of what Title 55 states, as far as our right to travel privately and legitimately, according to law, we should not be stopped unless we are doing something that is under the umbrella of commerce. You're dragging bodies because you work for a morgue or a funeral home. You're delivering pizza. You're hauling watermelons. If we're not operating in commerce, according to Title 55, there's no reason for us to be bothered in the first place. All right. That's just so part of me talking about law every Friday is going to help you understand that the scope of law, as far as how it's supposed to be enforced by police officer, is this wide. And I'm holding my hands very close together for those who may not see me. The scope of the law as how it is enforced is this wide. How it is often enforced is a football field wide. And why? Because we don't know or we have forgotten what our rights are. We have a Bill of Rights, which is totally addressing all of our individual rights guaranteed by the Constitution. And if we don't know this, the response that we have is emotional. And what do people do when they're emotional? They start talking. So part of the right of you remaining silent is not so you keep your emotions bottled in or not so you can hold in your feelings. It's so you won't say anything that will later incriminate you. You won't slip up and say something out of your frustration, your anger, that will undermine the fact that they illegally searched you, the fact that they illegally arrested you, right? So the right to remain silent it's not that nobody cares how you feel. It's just so that you won't say anything that can and will. Now understand what they said, because that rolls into number 2. Anything you say can and will. Pause. They didn't say can and possibly. We got to look at the context of what is said in the Miranda. It says anything that you say can and will be used against you. Not in your favor, not to help you out, not to set you free, used against you, right? In a court of law. Now, let me say this. Anytime you are arrested and you're taken to jail, whatever it is, whether it's DUI, murder, rape, it is the responsibility of the police department and the district attorney to build a case against you. And a lot of them wouldn't have a means of trapping you or putting you in prison if you didn't open up your mouth. Let me say that again. A lot of them would have no case. And how do I know? I know because looking at the Angela Moore case, Angela, I have not forgotten about you, my brother. We're still here fighting for you, Angela. Now, Angela was tortured. And I wouldn't expect anybody who's tortured by the police department not to say anything, right? Because nobody deserves to be beaten, coerced, tortured into any sort of confession. That's not custodial care, right? And let me tell you what the district attorney said. And so this is why it's important that I wanted to pick apart Fifth Amendment and Miranda, because this is how it gets used against you. Even though Angela was tortured by police officer Michael Wanger, who had a history of beating 3 other black men. Do you know what the district attorney said in his case against Angela? That despite the fact that he was tortured and coerced into a confession, he should have said on the tape recorder, "I don't consent. I choose to remain silent." Now, forget the fact that he was beaten. The expectation for him, despite the fact that he was tortured, according to the district attorney, was that regardless of how they got the confession, he still should have verbalized that he did not want to invoke the right to say anything, but rather his right to not self-incriminate. So that's how, when they say it can and will be used against you in the court of law, they're not playing about that, people. Because even when they don't do what's right, the expectation is that they want you to, they don't expect you to hold true to what would ultimately set you free. You have a right to remain silent, and what you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. The third part of the Miranda is you have a right to an attorney. Now, let me say this. Because when I say that the Angele case opened up my eyes to things that I knew but just didn't expect. The Angele case, part of the reason we were pushing for the post-conviction hearing for Angele was so we could get him a new trial. Now, the Miranda, even though it doesn't go into it, I wanted to insert this comment right here. That when you have a right to an attorney, what that really means, even though that's quite broad, let me, again, break it down to something very minimal for you. You don't just have a right to an attorney, folks. You have a right to effective counsel. What does that mean? If I'm poor and I don't have the funds, I should be provided a public defender. But that public defender should be effective counsel, meaning that whatever I'm being charged with, they should have the understanding of how to properly fight for me, despite the fact that I cannot provide legal counsel on my own. I wanted to add that in there because that kind of ties into the third and the fourth part of Miranda. Okay. Number 4 is if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Now, in Angele's case, the attorney who was responsible for representing him was provided to him and assigned to him by a judge. The interesting thing was that this lawyer only had about a year of experience that had never tried a murder trial, which that's what he was on trial for, a robbery and a murder. Understand, when you have counsel provided to you, they need to be effective. So the questions you need to be asking them, what is your experience? Have you ever tried DUI cases before? How many have you won? You know, folks, ask questions. I just wanted to put that in there. But you have a right to an attorney. And if you cannot afford one will be provided for you. And number 5, do you understand the rights I have just read to you? With these rights in mind, do you wish to speak to me? The answer to that question is no. Folks, don't talk to the police. And I hate having to be this way. But if we remember number 2, number 1 and number 2 are probably they are the most important parts of Miranda, which is your right to not incriminate yourself or say anything that is later going to be used against you to ensure that you're going to get locked up. Now, my radio director who gives me book recommendations to read, talks to me about the show. One of the things that he said to me that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life, if you argue, and he is the son of a police officer, if you argue the facts of a case, you're going to lose. But if you argue the law, you'll win. It's not about the facts. It's not about what police perceive. It's not about emotions or feelings, stereotypes or reasons. It's about, did they follow the scope of your constitutional rights, or did they infringe upon those? And one of the things that I think a lot of us, if we look back over some of our own personal interactions or even the interactions of loved ones with police, we'll find that police make a whole lot of stuff up. They don't know the Bill of Rights. They just know you don't know it. They don't know what the Fifth Amendment says. They just know you don't know it. They know now that I will say that they know that they should be reading you your Miranda rights, but they expect that you don't know it. And so we have to know, like I said yesterday, we have to know what we don't know. Somebody's saying that the audio sounds terrible. I apologize for that. I don't know what's going on. But they expect us to not know how to deal with situations like this. And so Miranda versus Arizona in 1966 basically was a landmark case that the interrogation of a defendant in police custody will be admissible at trial only if the prosecution can show that the defendant was informed of the right to counsel with the attorney before and during the questioning. So if police officers, so this is why I said when you're stopped by police or you're pulled over, immediately start asking questions. Your emotions are going to kick in, right? Well, a lot of us, they're going to be like, oh, our heart skips a beat. We're like, here we go again. Why are they stopping me? How is this going to turn out? Shut your emotions up and use your brain. Ask questions about why you're being stopped. Are you being detained? We covered those. But the next question is that before they start asking you questions, they should read you your Miranda. That's what it says right here in the landmark case of Miranda versus Arizona, that before police questioning and during, you should be Mirandized, and that anything that you say can only be used against you if and when you agree to the Mirandized. Basically, you agree to talk, and you don't have to do that. We're going to keep getting into it. We're going to cover the Fifth Amendment and due process. The Fifth Amendment, due process, talking about Miranda rights on Know Your Rights Fridays, which is deemed hits now and forevermore. Here on the Marie Mott Show, Nougat Radio 92.7. Stay tuned in.
Three, two, one.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A crane crash in Hickson may be worse than we thought. Although nobody was hurt when a crane toppled to the ground on Boy Scout Road, 3 homes were condemned. Reports say the crane belonged to Big Woody's Tree Service. It's still not known why the crane fell over, but what's clear is the damage it left behind. The roofs of 3 homes were caved in, and the families which lived inside have to go somewhere else. The THP in Calhoun confirms a man was killed when he was hit by a train in Georgetown. Reports say it happened at the intersection of South Main and 3rd. 32-year-old Ricky Ferry was walking on the tracks when 3 locomotives towing 53 cars slammed into him. And great news from the TBI. Missing endangered child Briella Bowling was found in Williamson County. Her non-custodial mother has been arrested. The 12-year-old was believed to be in danger when she was reportedly taken by her mother. The girl is from DeKalb County. Val St. John for Nougat Radio News Talk 92.7. Action News now.
Let's face it, Old Faithful isn't as faithful as it used to be. Constant repairs are a hassle and can rack up quick and money and time. Landers McClarty Ford can fix that. Right now, you can get a 2016 Ford Focus, 34,000 miles, only $11,491. A 2017 Chevy Spark with only 17,000 miles for less than $12,000. A 2015 Volkswagen Jetta with less than 21,000 miles for $11,991. Yeah, browse their entire inventory of new and new-to-you cars, trucks, and SUVs online at Landers McCarty Ford of FortPayne.com. Landers McClarty Ford of Fort Payne. If you can't find your next perfect ride, they'll go find it for you. Big city selection, small town prices, friendly service, and top dollar for your trade. The savings are waiting and only a short drive away, so what are you waiting for? Get started with your personalized shopping today at Landers McClarty Ford of FortPayne.com.
Nougat Radio.
Roar into Talladega.
Hello? Who am I speaking with? Eric. You're our winner. Really?
You'll receive tickets for all 3 races between the Camping World Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and the Monster Energy Cup races.
Holy cow.
In addition, you'll receive a 2-night stay at the Microtel Hotel and restaurant accommodations at 2 area restaurants.
Nougat Radio.
Roar into Talladega.
Nougat Radio.
92.7.
Your NASCAR racing station. Nougat Radio 92.7 FM.
Nougat Radio 92.7.
I got my business up and running, and it's already expanding. I got lucky. Lucky because I found Signal Voice and Data. Signal Voice and Data can incorporate all of my business information sharing and communications seamlessly, keep my costs down, and let me work more productively with endless connectivity no matter where I might be. That's called working smart, not hard. Go to signalvoicetn.com and bring the future of communication to your business today. signalvoicetn.com.
Your home is a constant work in progress. Repaint the walls? Yeah, easy enough. Leaky faucet? There's a video for that. But roof repair? You might want some help. That's where Chattanooga Roofing Contractors come in. They have 3 generations of roofing excellence you can count on. Leave the ladder in the garage. Go to chatroofing.com. That's chatroofing.com for Chattanooga Roofing Contractors, a roofing company you can trust.
Hey, Karen, you need me for that 1 o'clock?
Yes, Cheese, please. Karen, did you get the quarterlies done?
Yep, they're filed in the cabinet.
Karen, can you describe the initiatives to the new hire? Thanks.
Oh, sure. Full-bodied, some floral notes, maybe a hint of dark chocolate.
Am I in the right department?
Got wine on the mind? Come unwind at Virgola. Italian wine, oysters, caviar, cheeses, and more. Perfect after work or a romantic date night. Virgola Italian Wine Bar, 608 Georgia Avenue.
Man, you sure you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I worked with my dad on his truck all the time. Just one more bolt to go.
Yeah, wrong bolt. Today's truck ain't your daddy's truck. For repairs on today's vehicles, you need Amco Transmission and Total Car Care of Chattanooga on Lee Highway. Stay on the road, not in the garage. Amco Transmission on Lee Highway. Get it done the right way. The Thompson Pet way. Yeah, I just put that anywhere.
Now, Rick wants you to buy on U.S. Gold American coins. Are you tired of making 1% on your investments with the banks? Even 2 or 3% at best? Now, Rick wants you to buy on U.S. Gold American coins.
Rick Davis Golden Diamonds, Brainerd Road. Chattanooga weather.
It's been mostly cloudy, warm, and humid weather out there for your afternoon. A few scattered showers and storms will move in from the west, especially by this evening. Highs 85 to 87 tonight. A few lingering showers and thunder showers for the weekend. Still unsettled. Scattered showers and thunder showers. Highs lower to middle 80s. Control your diabetes with the help of Hamilton Diabetes and Endocrinology Center. Now in Dalton and Ringgold. For more, their number 706-278-1622. And I'm Snorty Walsh, Chief Meteorologist, Pastor 4.
The Radio 92.7.
It's very hot here. It's a rainy day in the city, a gloomy day in the city, but the sun is shining from where I'm standing. Why? Because I'm here to help you, the listener, to assist you, the listener. I'm not here to empower you. You already got the power. You just may have forgotten the information, or maybe you've never heard it before. And so it's my job here to help you understand that the scope of the law when it comes to the police department is 3 inches. Your rights is the football field. But often it's how they treat you is your rights is 3 inches, and how they police you is a football field. And so we got to change that. We got to shift that dynamic. And of course, if you want to call in and chop it up with me, 800-8949, 800-8949. Yeah, I've made comments about the Black Panther Party here before on the show, and I want to bring them up again because it's important that we understand what makes oppressed people dangerous. Besides solidarity, it is understanding that they have certain rights guaranteed to them by the Constitution that was written hundreds of years ago. And maybe because we don't go to school to become revolutionaries, pause. We don't go to school to really be taught things like this. A lot of us, if we covered this in history class or U.S. history in school, it was extremely brief, or it was so much information because of standardized testing and everything that we've probably long since forgot any of this stuff, right? Because how many of us have the Constitution up on the walls of our home? When you look at what really made the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords, which was a Puerto Rican I'm not going to call them a gang. That's what they were labeled as. But the Young Lords, which was a Puerto Rican organization of Puerto Ricans who came together through their own diaspora, they borrowed the 10-point program that the Black Panther Party had, which was a combination of beliefs for the African American community tied with constitutional right and expectation. And so if we don't know this stuff, we can't fight back. And if we're fighting back by cussing at police officers, or if we're fighting back by saying what you're doing is wrong, I'm sorry, that doesn't impact them. It doesn't force them to change either. But when we begin to have case after case after case after case, right, where people not only are walking free from their case because it's got dismissed or it's been thrown out of court, but when we start having civil suit after civil suit after civil suit after civil suit, because not only was our rights infringed upon, but we knew it, right? Then we're going to start seeing some change. Because real talk, the city of Chattanooga couldn't afford, if we knew what we should know from this point forward and what we're going to learn in the future. If we know later what we should know and what we are learning right now, folks, we would have landmark cases all across the country because police are infringing upon our individual rights, which are constitutional. And there's nothing above constitutional right. Let me explain that. Because a lot of us, well, I'm not going to say a lot of us because it ain't me, but some of the listeners out there and the people who just listen to Nooga Radio 92.7 just so they can hop on post and hate. Here I am trying to help you, and you hating on me. It ain't stopping me, but it's ridiculous. Seem to think that the personal feelings of a police officer are what matters. No, ma'am. No, sir. Your constitutional rights, which are the same for everybody listening, they're the same regardless of your race, your religion, your color, your socioeconomic status, how fat or skinny you are, regardless of, even if you are an alien, you're here, you got rights. Now, we can try to pick those apart as much as we want to, and people do. But the law says what it says, okay? And so, Fifth Amendment, let's get into it. We're going to start going through the Bill of Rights, folks. Your Fifth Amendment states, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against him or herself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. And so the Fifth Amendment deals with several things all at once. It guarantees your right to a grand jury. It forbids double jeopardy, and I'm going to get into that after due process. And it protects against self-incrimination. It also requires that due process of law be a part of any proceeding that denies a citizen life, liberty, or property. So due process law is a part of any proceeding that denies you of life, liberty, or property. The moment that you go into those handcuffs, folks, you've been denied life, liberty, and property. All right. And requires the government to compensate citizens when it takes private property for public use. So you have a right to a grand jury, which is 16 to 23 people. All right. We got somebody calling in. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Talk to me.
I love your Constitutional Rights Friday. I know you don't have a lot of time, so I'll be very quick. The second your freedom of movement is stopped, you are under arrest. That's what arrest means, to stop. So when they say you're not under arrest, you're being detained, that's a lie. If your freedom of movement can be stopped, it is an arrest, period. Number two, most people, even lawyers, don't know what this is. You know what an infamous crime is?
No.
It's anything that can put you in jail for over a year. That's a felony. That's all a felony is. A felony is if you could be sent to jail for more than a year, then it's a felony. If it's less than a year, it's a misdemeanor. So when we read that, we have to understand when they say infamous crime, they mean most crimes now that are out there. You know, they want to make everything a felony. Because, you see, the government can't steal your guns legally. And this is what I love about the Black Panthers and other rights groups, is that even though they're labeled liberals, they carry guns. I love it. Under the Second Amendment. But since they can't, the occupiers, left and right, the Republicans and Democrats can't steal your gun under the Second Amendment. If you're a convicted felon, you can't have a gun. See that scam? So let's make everyone a convicted felon. If you get caught drinking and driving twice, you're a felon. If you do this, they want everyone to have a felony on their record because that's the way to get the guns out of your pocket. No guns, no resistance. Thanks for the show. It sounds great.
Thank you. So an infamous crime. Thank you. See, I love when people call in with information like this because these are things that we need to know. And part of the reason why we need to understand what our constitutional rights are, Bill of Rights are, is because the law was written before we had all of these changes, before we went through all of these isms and schisms on a grand scale. The law was written at a time that made it quite simple to understand. And the beauty of how it's written is it's written in an intelligent way that actually saves us and provides a net. Understand what constitutional rights are. Constitutional rights are your safety net. The Bill of Rights is your safety net that keeps you from falling into prison or into having that red F that like your teacher would give you in school, felon status, that, you know, part of just being able to remove your ability to fight back by having your right to bear arms is we also got to understand what felons also don't. It makes it hard for you to get a job, difficult for you to get housing, almost impossible for you to go back to school. So understand that how the government uses law and how the police use law is not really in your benefit. Now, the truth of what the law states is in your benefit. But if you don't know that, how do you fight back? You'll go to court and help give our district attorneys who do zero legwork, right, a 90-something% win record because you'll cop a plea. And why will you cop a plea? Because your emotions tell you to do that, because you're thinking about all of the things stacked against you instead of knowing in your heart of hearts and in your mind of minds what your rights are and picking apart your own case. But when the police stop me, did they do this? Did they tell me this? Did they provide this? Or do I find myself acknowledging that my rights, which I'm telling you, probably 99% of the time, when you're interacting with police or the government, your rights have been infringed upon. I can almost guarantee that. And so if we don't know what hurts us, we're in trouble. So this is the Fifth Amendment we're talking about. Now, due process. Now, the Constitution states only one command twice. Quite interesting. The Fifth Amendment says to the federal government that no one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The 14th Amendment ratified in 1868 uses the same 11 words called the Due Process Clause to describe the legal obligation of all states. The legal obligation of all states. Okay. So what is, when we look at it, what is due process? Because I believe we hear terms, we see them, but we don't really understand what it is. So due process is fair treatment through the judicial system, especially as a citizen's entitlement. Okay? It is a safeguard from arbitrary denial of life, liberty, or property, which is what we just explained within the Fifth Amendment. So due process is the legal requirement that is owed to you to respect all of your legal rights that you are owed as a person. And so we have to understand that when we're pulled over and we're questioned, and now it says detained, but as our commentator listed early, you're under arrest the moment that you have been impeded from private travel. And we can't think about law in a 2018 perspective because the law wasn't written right now. We have to think about law. What did the founding fathers and our first forebears, what did they mean and what did they intend when they wrote this? We got to put on a mind that's 200-something years old. Because if we look at it right now, we'll put the shackles on. So the Fifth Amendment guarantees your right to a grand jury. It requires due process. It forbids double jeopardy. Now, what is double jeopardy? Double jeopardy is a clause within the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution that prohibits anyone from being prosecuted twice for substantially the same crime. Okay? So it prohibits double jeopardy and protects you against self-incrimination. Now, we hear all these big words. What is self-incrimination? It's the act of implicating oneself in a crime or exposing oneself to criminal prosecution. And this is why when we talk about Miranda rights and when we start talking about police, our answers, when they ask us questions, our answers need to be relayed in law, constitutional law. Whenever they ask us any question, well, use my mother, for example. Miss Mott, we're stopping you today because I believe that you have some stolen clothes in your car. Can you prove that? Do you have any evidence of that? Why are you stopping me? You know, talk to me.
Yes, I would like to point out, and you may have already talked about this, but most people don't realize that the 14th Amendment that abolished slavery in this country has one exception, and it is under involuntary servitude as a result of being imprisoned.
Yes.
And so most people don't realize that when we talk about being imprisoned and the justice system being bent towards putting certain people into prison, that is actually an erosion of their rights as a citizen, their rights to be free, as we list out in the Constitution, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is taken away from you once you have been imprisoned. It doesn't say convicted. It says imprisoned, and then you are subject to due process of law. But as long as you're in prison, you are denied your rights as a citizen. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. That's my mama, y'all. And I love my mom is such a reader, a thinker. I didn't wake up and get how I am. She's one of the reasons why. But yes, the 14th Amendment does give us certain rights, that slavery is here, henceforth abolished in all of the land, with the exception of if we got you locked up. And so one of the things that I wanted to deal with is often what gets us locked up. Running our mouth, talking, instead of when we interact with police, knowing what our individual rights are in the eyes of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Right? How we interact with police has to be stating and asserting, right? And when I say asserting, that means knowing, that means making it plain, asserting. You are empowered by knowing what your rights are and then verbalizing it. And I'm so sorry, my phone just died. For those who are watching me on Facebook, pick up with Nougat Radio's Facebook page. But yes, and one of the things that we need to think about, because again, we don't know what we don't know. I believe it's like 60% of the people who are in prison have not even been convicted. They are there because they don't have the means of bailing themselves out. You see, people figured out, and this is why school is trash. People figured out a long time ago, if we stop telling people stuff, when we stop teaching people stuff, we remove their ability to fight back. And then we can shovel them and push them into prison and convict them of crimes that often they wouldn't be convicted of because they don't know what to do, what to say, and what their personal rights are. The power is in your hands, and the foundation of power is knowledge. Folks, I recommend, it's radical, but it is what it is. I recommend that we need to print out the Bill of Rights. We need to have a copy of that in our vehicle. We need to print out Miranda rights. We need to have a copy of that in our vehicle. You can actually go to ACLU, the ACLU website, and they actually have cards, some cards like that. And I'm probably I'm looking at developing some cards that I can pass around to people and just hand them out about knowing your rights. So when you're stopped, it's already right there, either in your glove compartment or in your little cubby hole. They're right there. So that flustering, that nervousness goes away, because then we have that power and we're like, I'm ready. I'm wondering what they're going to say because I'm ready. Know Your Rights Fridays, every Friday. Miranda Warning, Fifth Amendment. Folks, you have a right to remain silent. Don't talk to the police. I'm just trying to keep it real with you guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Can't wait until next Friday to dig a little deeper into the Bill of Rights with you guys. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. And as always, if no one has taken the time to tell you that they love you today, Marie Mott with the Marie Mott Show here at 92.7 loves you. And it ain't nothing you can do about that. Have a good day, baby.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A crane crash in Hickson may be worse than we thought, although nobody was hurt when a crane toppled to the ground on Boy Scout Road. 3 homes were condemned.